Hi everyone. Today we are going to be working on simplifying mathematical expression. And first we will start with simplifying two or more negative variables or non-variables. Let's start with the example one. On my left here we have a couple of it. We have four examples, and let's start with let's simplify this this property over here without variables. To solve this, right, to simplify this, there are two steps you need to actually do, right? So the first step, you have to look at, the sign. You see the sign, they are both negative. So first, you need to actually add the numbers, right? You're adding the numbers, add the numbers, right? So when you add the numbers, when you add 7, if you do 7 plus 5, which is 12. And then second step, right? Second, you need to add the negative sign, right? Add the negative sign, right? So which is equals to negative 12, right? So this is what we do. What we do first, right? So we add the numbers, right? We add those two numbers, which is give us 12, and then we keep the negative sign. So here it is. Whenever you simplifying to negative numbers, right? What you do, you add the numbers and you keep the negative sign. So this is what we just did here, right? So let's do number 2 now. So number two is negative 15x and then minus 3x, right? So now we have with a variable now, right? So which is x, right? So we're actually doing exactly the same thing. All we do, we add the two numbers here, the number with the variables here, right? We keep the same variable. Since you notice that they are the same, we can basically just add them, right? So we're adding them, which is 15x plus 3x give us 18x, right? And then remember, whenever we see two negative sign, you add the numbers and keep the negative sign. So which means that the answer is negative 18. So now let's do number 3. So let's do number 3 now. So number 3 is negative 15 minus 23x, and then minus 12, and then minus 16x, right? So now you notice that we have variable and an integer, right? Like in numbers without variable, right? So now first we need to group, right? We need to group the like terms, right? First thing we do, we group the like terms. What are the like terms here? The like terms are negative 15 and then 12, right? And then you see that the like terms of x is those over here. You see that they have x's, right? So now we need to group them together. So we say that it's going to be negative 15 and then negative 12 and then negative 23 or negative 23x and negative 16x, right? So remember the rules. We apply exactly the same rules. You notice those two terms over here, they have exactly the same sign, right? So remember, when they have the same sign, what we do, we add the numbers and keep the negative sign. So 15 plus 12 will give us 27, right? And then we keep the negative sign, which is negative 27. And then 23x minus 16x, right? When we add them, right? We add them and keep the same sign, the same way what we actually did for negative 15, negative 12. So this will give us 39, right? When you add them, you give us 39, and then we keep the negative sign, which is negative 39x, right? So this is what it equals to, right? If you want, you can rewrite it, right? You can rewrite it as negative 39x and then negative 27, right? This is exactly the same thing. So you can write it either that way or this way. All right, so to solve a problem like that, we need to look at the variables, right? So we can't simplify without combining the variables. You notice that all of them got different variables. We can't just simplify them like that, right? So we can simplify all the variables with each other, but you can't simplify you know, two different variables, right? So we need to first grouping the variables, right? So let's look at them. So we notice that we have W, T, Y, and then S, right? So let's do W first. This is what W is, right? So we have negative W, 46 W's here, right? So we're done with that. And then we have negative 4W here too. I'm sorry, this is negative 46W, right? So we're done with that. And then now let's work with T. So we have negative 6T, right? And then we have negative T. So we're done with that. And we have another negative T over here, right? And then we're also done with that. So now let's work with Y. So we notice that there's only one Y, so we can't do nothing else. We can't add them with anything else, right? And then after that, let's do did we do that W? We did not do that W. So we must add W. Let's add it over here at the end, right? So we're gonna see W, negative W. And then let's do S now. Negative 6, negative S, and then negative 6S. So we're done with all. So we're done grouping. So now we can simplify, finally, right? So remember, when we have multiple negative sign, we add the numbers and keep the negative sign, right? So that's the whole point here. So remember, there's a 1 there, right? 46 plus 4 will give us 50, right? 50W. And then plus 1W will give us 51W, right? Remember, we have to add the numbers and keep the same sign, because you notice that they all has exactly the same sign, right? All the signs here are negative. So we can basically add the numbers and keep the negative sign. So which means that my sign over here will be negative 51, right? So I'm going to be doing exactly the same work here, right? So I notice that I have only negative sign here too, right? Only negative sign for T's. So meaning that I can add them then, right? So 6 plus 1, right? Remember there's 1T here and 1T. So meaning that this over here will give us 2T, and then the whole thing will give us 8T. Remember, there are 3 negative signs, so I can basically keep the negative sign, which is negative 8. So I'm done with T. Now I have Y. So remember, Y is fine. You can keep Y since Y have nobody else to hang out with, right? We cannot simplify Y, right? We keep Y the way it is. And then now we have S, right? So let's simplify S. Remember, there's a 1 there, right? So if there's a 1 there, we can basically add them since they have 2 negative signs, correct? Right? So we're saying that 1S plus 6S will give us 7S, and then we keep the negative sign, which is negative 7S. And then we are done. If you want, you can rearrange them in terms of you know, variable, but it doesn't matter. We can just leave it that way, right? So this is the answer. We are going to simplify 2 or more negative you know, variables and or non-variables, right? So on the left here we have a couple of examples. So let's start with number 1, right? Number 1 is negative 7 and then positive 5. So you notice that we have 2 different signs, right? So we have 2 different signs. Whenever we have 2 different signs, we need to carefully look at the sign that actually belong to the greatest number, right? And also step 1, right? So we have steps. I always have some steps here. So step 1, right? Step 1 first. The first step 1, you have to subtract, right? You have to subtract. You have to subtract, right? So we have to subtract. What are we subtracting? So we have to subtract 7, right? 7 and 5 from 5. So you say that it's 7 minus 5, right? 7 minus 5 give us what? Give us 2. And step 2, right? Step 2. Step 2, you have to use the sign that belongs to the greatest number, right? So which sign you notice that has the greatest numbers here? The greatest number here is what? It's 7. That's the highest number here, right? The highest number here is 7. So we have to use the sign with the highest number, right? And you say the sign with the highest number is negative. So meaning that the answer, right, use the sign with the highest number, right? The sign with the highest number is negative here, right? So which means that the answer will be -7, right? All right, so let's do one more example. Let's do one more example on that one. So let's say that we have this, I'm gonna call this one number 1A, right? Number 1B. So that's number 1A and then it's number 1B. So imagine that you have 9 minus 10. If you have 9 minus 10, right? So what do you think we should do here? Right? You notice that the sign with the highest number, right, is what? It's negative, right? Remember, there's a positive over here. Even though you don't see the positive, there's always a positive there, right? So meaning that we are going to subtract, right? We are going to subtract. We're subtracting 10, well, 10 minus 9 will give us 1, and the sign with the highest number is negative. So meaning that the answer will be -1, right? All right, good. So now let's do number 2. Let's do example number 2. So example number 2 is 2 example number 2 is -8 plus 9, right? So which one has the highest power here? Which one has the highest number here? Which sign has the highest number? The sign with the highest number is positive, right? So you notice that 9 is greater than 8, right? Right, so we say that the positive is actually the one that's leading them, right? And then what do? We have to subtract first, right? So we're subtracting. We say 9 minus 8 will give us 1. And the sign with the highest number here is positive. So meaning that the answer is +1. So you don't have to put the +1, you can just keep the 1. It doesn't matter. All right, so let's do another example with variable now. So let's say that we have -6x plus 5x, right? And this one, we see we have variables. It's exactly the same thing. We don't have to actually overthinking it. We use exactly the same idea that we used in this one, right? So since they are like terms, we can basically, what we do first, we basically subtracting, right? And then we keep the sign with the highest number, right? So we notice the leading sign over here is what? Is negative because the user writes negative because you see 6 is bigger than 5, right? If 6 is bigger than 5, so you already know that the final answer will have a negative sign. So you subtract 6 minus 5 will give us 1x, right? We don't have to put the 1x. If you want, you can put 1. And then the leading sign is negative. So meaning that the answer is negative, right? So let's do number 4, which is 7x minus 3y minus 5t minus 8x plus 5y, and then minus 2t. So what we do, we have to combine the like terms, what we did when we did on, when we simplify into negative numbers. So we are, the like terms over here are x, right, xx, and then over here, we can start putting in, we can say that it's 7x, and then minus 8x, and then y, which is gonna be 3y, and then plus 5y, and after that we have t, -5t, and then -2t. So we just combine the like terms. So now we are ready to simplify, right? So now we are going to say that, hey, 7x minus 8x. So remember, whenever you have a positive, right, there's always a positive here. Even though we don't see this, you don't see it, right? So we're saying that whenever you have a positive and negative, you subtract and then you keep the sign with the highest number, right? You already know that the leading sign here is negative. So we put the negative and then we say 8 minus 7, which is x, right? 1x. We don't have to put the 1. And then we are done with this. Now we're going to be working with the y, right? So we say minus y plus 5. So you know the leading sign here is 5 because 5 is bigger than 3. So then we subtract the numbers and then we have 5 minus, we can put the plus, and then 5 minus 3 is 2y. And then we do exactly the same thing for we're done with this, and we can work with the t. So you notice that the t is the first example that we use, right? When you have 2 negative numbers. Remember, when you have 2 negative numbers, what you do, you subtract, I mean, you add the numbers, you add the numbers, and you keep the negative sign, right? So now we'll have 5t plus 2t will give us 7t. And then we are